Imagine, just for a moment, a world where a single drop of blood could unlock all your health secrets. No more large needles, no more painful vials, just a tiny pinprick, a miniature box, and a future free from disease. A drop of blood, a $9 billion promise. And one of Silicon Valley's greatest lies. This is the story of ambition, deception, and reckoning. Theranos, the $9 billion lie. This promise touched investors, politicians, and patients. A device called the Edison would change everything. Or so we were told. But behind the curtain, the magic was a mirage. This is how they built a $9 billion house of cards. Rise of Theranos. She dropped out of Stanford, she founded a company. She was young, brilliant, and utterly convincing. She named it Theranos, a promise to democratize healthcare. The idea was intoxicating, hundreds of tests from a single drop. She called it the Edison, a small black box supposedly capable of running hundreds of diagnostics. She paraded the concept in front of potential investors and partners. Investors opened wallets, hundreds of millions followed. Rupert Murdoch, Larry Ellison, the Walton family. She assembled a board that looked more like a presidential cabinet. Henry Kissinger, George Shultz. Massive deals with Walgreens and Safeway lent instant legitimacy. Safeway spent over $350 million building clinics that never became fully operational. Walgreens launched a partnership in Arizona. For Holmes, these deals were proof her revolution was already here. Her persona was carefully curated, every element reinforcing genius. She adopted the uniform, an unmistakable homage to Steve Jobs. Forbes, Fortune Inc. headlines celebrated her as the youngest self-made female billionaire. The press accepted the myth, because it was one people wanted to believe. But behind the curtain, critics were silenced. Secrecy reigned. Data was guarded, redacted, and sometimes manipulated. The architect of the illusion, Elizabeth Holmes. She became a media darling. Covers, profiles, glowing features. She spoke on global stages, gave TED Talks, and charmed audiences. Television segments reinforced the mythology. She courted press access, granting exclusives on her terms. Profiles emphasized wealth, youth, and destiny. They glossed over technical specifics while celebrating the founder. A feedback loop formed: press, investors, more press. Each glowing feature made it easier to attract capital. But technical experts were rarely in the spotlight. She even deepened her voice to sell authority. The narrative became more real than the reality itself. The persona acted as a shield against scrutiny. There was an absence of peer-reviewed data. Inside Theranos, secrecy and compartmentalization became the norm. Sunny Balwani helped enforce that silence. NDAs were weaponized, and when devices failed, data was altered to hide the truth. The cult of personality had built a fragile empire. The technology, the heart of the $9 billion valuation, was a fiction. Technicians saw error messages again and again. They diluted tiny finger-prick samples to make them usable. Secretly, Theranos used third-party machines like Siemens to run tests. Outliers were deleted, results were manipulated, engineers improvised unsafe workarounds to keep the outputs looking plausible. Quality control failed, again and again. Tyler Schultz saw cherry-picked data and cheating on proficiency tests. He raised concerns and was dismissed. Erica Chung witnessed chaotic labs and deleted outlier data. She watched results get altered to appear consistent. Patients began receiving false medical results. The potential for human harm was immense. Secrecy, threats, and NDAs silenced employees. Theranos hired powerful lawyers to intimidate skeptics. Private investigators followed reporters and sources. Brave employees risked careers to tip off journalists. On October 15, 2015, the Wall Street Journal published the first devastating piece. It revealed that Theranos wasn't using its proprietary tech for most tests. Regulators descended. Inspectors found widespread deficiencies. CMS issued a scathing report and sought to revoke licenses. Labs were forced to halt clinical testing. The dream of a painless test became a nightmare of fraudulent data. The $9 billion valuation evaporated, partnerships dissolved, investors sued, Walgreens sued, Safeway counted losses, investors faced ruin, investigations pieced together a trail of deception. Human consequences reverberated beyond balance sheets. Theranos was now a company in retreat. The house of cards could not hold. Exposed. The fortress Holmes built began to crumble. Headline after headline documented the unraveling. Once valued at $9 billion, then worth nothing. Investors saw fortunes evaporate. Retail partnerships dissolved and lawsuits followed. Employees were let go. Labs closed. Dreams ended. A cascade of lawsuits and regulatory sanctions followed. Hundreds of millions were at stake. Investors demanded answers. Regulatory sanctions piled up. Federal indictments soon followed. The media circled like vultures. Companies sought to recoup losses. Millions were at stake. A failure of due diligence was painfully obvious. Beyond money, trust, and patient safety were compromised. Holmes's public persona lost its sheen. The money that fueled the myth was gone. Wellness centers stayed unfinished. Patients were left confused. A once unstoppable company had been exposed. In March 2018, the SEC charged Holmes and Balwani with massive fraud. They allegedly deceived investors out of more than $700 million. Holmes settled civil charges, a $500,000 fine, and surrendering control. She was barred from serving as an officer or director for 10 years. A federal grand jury indicted them on wire fraud and conspiracy counts. The trial became a high-profile courtroom drama. Prosecutors used her own emails and texts to show she was in control. Holmes took the stand and claimed abuse and manipulation by Balwani. Balwani was tried separately and portrayed as a domineering figure. In January 2022, the jury delivered its verdict. Holmes was found guilty on 4 counts related to defrauding investors. She was acquitted on charges of defrauding patients. In November 2022, she was sentenced to over 11 years. Balwani later received nearly 13 years. The black turtleneck was replaced by an orange jumpsuit. The verdict ended a public spectacle and began a reckoning. Judgment Day had arrived. Accountability at last. Theranos is a cautionary tale about unchecked ambition and the cost of hype. Greed plus hype plus no substance equals sign wreckage. Lost fortunes, shattered careers, betrayed trust. Investigative journalism and whistleblowers expose the truth. The lesson: integrity of mission and methods matters most. Subscribe to Fraudline for more finance and tech scandals.